Hello, and thank you for joining me again today. We are going to be focusing on the geometry feature of GeoGebra. So if you caught my last video on graphing, I already discussed the settings for the grid. So if you don't know how to do things with the grid and the axes, feel free to check out that video on graphing to learn those. I did want to teach you one more thing this week about the grid. So another nice way that you can access it is just by right-clicking on your screen. So when you right-click on your screen, you get these nice features here. So you can deal with zooming in and out, zoom to fit to your screen, and again, you can make the grid appear and disappear, and the same thing with the axes. So just another handy way to do that. Slowly filling in your toolbox of what you can do with GeoGebra. Alright, so the first thing we're going to start with on geometry are just our basic polygons. So you can do a polygon that you create completely yourself just by plotting points on the screen. And to finish your polygon, you always have to click back on the first point you plotted to fill in your shape there. We can also do regular polygons. So for regular polygons, you're just going to select 2 points that you know you want your polygon to go through, and then you're going to select the number of vertices that you have to determine what type of polygon you're creating. So let's do 5 there, create a pentagon. All right, then we also have rigid polygons and vector polygons, but we're not going to talk about those today. I'll let you explore those 2 tools if you're interested in looking at some other types of polygons here. Alright, so now that we have some polygons on our screen, a nice tool that we have over here with point, you may have noticed this in the graphing video, there's this thing called point on object. So we can plot a point anywhere we want on an object. It can be inside the object, you can plot it on one of the edges, and then again, if we want to move it, we can go back to our mouse tool and we can grab our point and we can move it anywhere that you want. What you'll notice here is that it does not let us drag the point outside of the object because we have selected that we want a point in the object, so it's going to keep it within that object, which is really nice. Now, if we want to delete something, we can just right-click it. We can check to make it appear or disappear. We can give it a label, so you'll see this one would be poly 1. This one would have a different title. Showing trace will show just different features of the polygon. You can rename it, so if you don't want it named poly 1 anymore, you can rename it. But I'm going to go ahead and delete it for now. And so what you'll notice by showing trace, it leaves kind of like a shadow of the polygon behind it. And then let's delete these points. All right. So now let's create another polygon. So let's say I want another triangle. All right, so looking at this triangle right here, now we don't have any overlap with our shadow here. We can select to find the midpoint of our polygon. Okay, so if we want to find the midpoint, we're going to select on the midpoint or center tool, and to do the midpoint, we can click anywhere on this edge. So even if I click all the way up here, on this edge, it's going to tell me exactly where the midpoint is, and so I can do that on all of these edges if I want. Then you'll notice it was titled midpoint or center, so we can also click on the polygon, and it's going to tell us exactly where the center of that polygon is. So in this case, this would be the center of our triangle. Alright, I would like to start fresh now with a new screen. So I'm just going to come over here and I'm going to click new. I don't want to save this. Don't save. Alright, so then we're going to click back on geometry and now we have a fresh screen to start with. So the next thing we're going to look at here, if you remember, this is our line tool that helped us when we were graphing. We used lines, so we can create lines similarly in the geometry tool. We can also create segments. So there's 2 different types we can create here. So the first one, if we click segment, just lets us plot our 2 points anywhere to create a segment of whatever length we make it when we click. The other way is if I know I have a specific length I want my segment, I can click on that. I'm going to select one point, then I'm going to give my specific length. So I'm going to say 5, and it's making it 5 units long now. And then if I want, I can move it anywhere on the grid that I want. If I were to move this one, it's not going to maintain the length, it's actually going to change that length as I move those points. And then this point here, we can change, so it's still keeping it that length of 5. If you notice, it doesn't matter how close or far I move my mouse, it's keeping it the same length, but we can change the angle of the segment. Then looking back at this tool, we can also do something similar with array. So we can plot our first point, then our second point. Again, a vector anywhere we would like. If we want to move them, we can always move and change where they were. So pretty straightforward on those tools there. Another handy tool we have, if we have a point plotted, so let's say I have this point here and I want to create a vector from this point in the same direction that I have this vector over here. I'm going to click on the starting point, and then I'm going to click the vector to show the direction I want it to go, and it's going to create that same vector, so same length and same direction as we had up here. Now we're going to go ahead and start fresh again for the next set of tools we're going to look at. So now we're going to be looking at perpendicular bisectors, angle bisectors, and tangents. Alright, so clicking on geometry again, we're going to start with a line segment. So I have just a line segment here, line segment AB. And let's say I want a perpendicular bisector to line segment AB. So I'm going to click on perpendicular bisector. Now there are two different ways we can do this. The first way is just by clicking on the line. So if I click on the line segment, if I click on the line segment, it's going to automatically create that perpendicular bisector. Now the other way we can do this, again clicking on perpendicular bisector, we can also do it by clicking on 2 points. So you'll notice as I go to click on those points, it's going to show where it will go. So coming over here to B, we're going to click, and there is our perpendicular bisector. Now, if we want to look at an angle bisector, let's create a regular polygon. We're going to make a triangle, so let's give it 3 vertices here. Okay, so we have our triangle. If we wanted to create an angle bisector here, again, we're just going to click up here, select our angle bisector. Now again, we have 2 different ways we can do this. We can create it by selecting the 2 lines that come together to make the vertice we want to bisect, or we can select 3 different points on the triangle and it's going to bisect there for us. Alright, then the next thing we want to look at are tangents. And so to do a tangent, that means we need to have a circle. So let's delete these and we'll create a circle. Let's just drag the screen so we have some fresh space here. Alright, so let's just create a circle. Alright, now with our circle here, to create a tangent, we're going to click here, select tangent, and to do the tangent, we're going to select a point or line and then the circle. So I'm going to select this point here, then I'm going to select the circle, and you'll see it creates my tangents that go through this point here. So pretty straightforward again. Alright, now we're going to look a little more closely at circles in general. So this tool right here is going to give us everything that we need to know about a circle. So the first one that you saw me just create is the circle with center through a point. So all I'm going to do is select a point, and then I can change the radius of the circle depending on how far in or out I drag the mouse. Then the other way we can create a circle with a center and a radius. So here we're just going to select a point, and then if we want a specific value for our radius, we can type that in to make sure that it's exactly the size that we want it. All right. Then we can also do a circle through 3 points. So if we want to do a circle through 3 points, we're just going to select the 3 points that we want to have on the circle, so you can see how the circle will change as I move my mouse here. So we would select any 3 points, and there we have a perfect circle through it. We can also do semicircles if we don't want full circles, circular arcs if we don't want it to be a full half circle, and all these tools are going to work similarly. So if we do a semicircle, we're just going to select the 2 points and it will create that semicircle for us. Similarly, if we have a circular arc, we're going to select the center and then the 2 points to kind of decide how much of the circle do we really want here. All right, and then we can also do sectors if we want a sector instead of just an arc. So lots of different tools there you can use with the circle. All of them, again, are pretty straightforward and easy to figure out just by plotting those points. Okay, so that's about all we're going to talk about for circles here. So let's get a fresh screen again to talk about some more tools. So next, clicking here, we can create angles 2 different ways. So I can create an angle just by selecting the 3 points I want, and you'll notice here that it tells me the measure of that angle so we know exactly what the measure is. We can also create one with a given size. So if I want a specific angle, I'm going to plot 2 of the points, and then I can type whatever I want that angle to be. So I want a perfect right angle. You can determine which way it's going to go, counterclockwise or clockwise. And then we click OK, and it's going to give that perfect angle for me. We can also measure the distance of things. So if I have a line segment, let's say I created this line segment FG, and I wanted to measure that distance or length. I'm going to click on the tool here, then click on my segment, and it's going to tell me exactly what my length is. And you'll see right now that it's telling us in centimeters. So we have 9 52/100 centimeters long for our segment FG. Then we can also measure area. So let's create another polygon. I'm just going to create a random one here. So we have a triangle. If I want to measure the area, I'm going to use the area tool, and I'm going to click here, and it's going to tell me exactly what that area is. And again, because it's measuring in centimeters, we know that the units here would be centimeters squared. Okay, so that's about all we need to know here for these tools that we're going to use for geometry. So then the last thing that we're going to talk about are transformations. So to talk about transformations, let's go ahead and create a triangle that we can use for our transformations. All right, so this tool is going to give us everything we need to know about transformations. So the first tool that we have is reflecting about a line. So to do this, we need to select an object that we're going to reflect, and then we need the line of reflection. So let's go ahead and create a line that we can reflect over. So I'm just going to create this line here, DE. So selecting here, I'm going to select the tool. So first I select the object, then I'm going to select the line, and it gives me a perfect reflection. We can also reflect about a point. So if I select this, again, I can select my object. I'm going to select a point now, and if we move our graph, actually we can just zoom out here so we can see them both. You'll notice that it reflected it about this point here. We can also reflect about a circle. So if we have a circle or a semicircle or just an arc, we can use that. Then we can also rotate around a point. So if I click on my object and then a point, I'm going to type in my angle of reflection, angle of rotation, select whether I want it to go counterclockwise or clockwise, and then it's going to rotate it for me. I can also translate it by a vector. So if I have a vector here, I'm going to create, where do I want this to go? I want it to go this direction for that specific length. Then I'm going to translate it by that vector. So selecting the object and then the vector, it's going to translate it for me. And lastly, I can also dilate from a point. So if I select this point 2, then select my object, and then my point, I'm going to select the factor. Let's do a factor of 5, and there it dilates for me. Okay, so those are all the geometry tools that we are going to look at for today. While there are some more tools you can explore, this should give you enough of a basic foundation to really get started with using the geometry tool on GeoGebra. Thanks so much for joining today, and keep looking out for my next video.